welcome back to Nikki's Scrapbooking Adventures. Today we're going to make a traveler's notebook. Now this is the sample that I made out of yellow cardstock because I have a lot of it. And I don't use it very often, so I was like, yeah, whatever. Okay. So this is what we are going to be making today. Now I've made notebooks in the past, so I will go ahead and link those notebooks down below and probably in the upper right hand corner wherever of YouTube land. And this, I've already made 4 notebooks, so I need to make a traveler's notebook holder that will accommodate for 4 notebooks. So we're actually going to do 5 today because that's easier to work with odd numbers. My sample is actually 3, but I wanted to try this before committing. So one thing that I will say is that 1 piece of cardstock is not enough. It will not hold up against the test of time. So we are going to need 3 pieces of cardstock so that we can have an outside and inside cover plus a middle just to make it super strong. Because we are going to have 5 strings, that means we need 11 eyelets. We're going to need embroidery floss. Okay, so you get to pick out of your kit the embroidery floss that you want to use. You're going to need a button for the closure. So the way you close this is that you've got the extra string here. You go ahead and put your thumb here to hold a spot, and then your little button will catch that spot for you. And it works better if you have it actually full. Okay, so that is the closure that we're going to be using today. You could absolutely add a little piece of paper here, put a Velcro dot on either side and close it that way. Absolutely can do that. I figure since we're using the embroidery thread, might as well go ahead and finish it that way. So the tools that you're going to need are an eyelet setter. You're going to need a hole punch, which that's what this is. You're going to need a needle. Got my little box of tools here. A needle threader. You're going to need glue to glue the 3 pieces together. And you're going to need a quarter rounder. Now, notebooks, it doesn't really matter if it's a rounded edge. You can absolutely round the edge, but it will matter when it comes to this holder because the holder is going to take the beating for the notebooks. Now, if you're going to use the notebooks outside of it, I would definitely suggest going ahead and rounding those corners because what happens is when you have rounded corners, they're less likely to bend or get smushed, but when you have sharp corners, they are going to get bent and smushed. But like I said, this needs to be 3 papers thick at least because it is bendy, flimsy, flimsy, flimsy. And I think this is probably 110-pound cardstock and it's still pretty flimsy. Just to let you know my thought process behind this. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Bungalow Lane cardstock. I'm going to use these. And then I think I'm going to go ahead and pull some buttons from here. We'll see how that goes. And I think I'm going to use this dark blue floss. I've got my other 3rd piece of cardstock to be kind of that buffer. So in quarter to my instructions, we're going to go ahead and cut all of this up. Okay. So I'm going to take my 8.5 by 11 piece and we're going to cut it 6.5 by 8. 6.5 by 8. So you really don't need that much paper, but you have to remember your orientation, right? So I'm going to close this like that. Okay. So when I wrap this around, I want this to be my outside, and I want these to be horizontal. That's going to be important. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and go 6.5. Go this way, 6.5 Just make sure I like where that lands. Let's go ahead and trim just a smidge off here. And I can save that for later. It's a great border. So 6.5. I just can't win, can I? Okay. By 8. Okay. So I could absolutely leave it this way with the white inside, because this is already pretty thick, but I'm going to add just another layer. So this one doesn't really matter orientation, so I'm going to go ahead and go 6.5 by 8. And there's the inside. So here's the outside and here's the inside. Okay, so next step is going to be gluing. For this project, I'm actually going to go ahead and use Modge Podge, because you can get a nice even coat. So here is the 2 glues that I've got. I picked this up at Dollar Tree and I picked this up at Hobby Lobby. So this one's gloss and this is matte. I'm going to go ahead and use the matte finish to add this. Now I'm not scoring yet because it's going to be easier to line up my pages when things are not bent and folded and all that fun stuff. And I'm going to go ahead and corner round when I'm done adhering everything. So we've got outside, inside, outside. Go ahead and plop some glue here. Notice I protected my surface, even though this is a glass mat and I think it'd probably be pretty easy to clean. That's not something I want to clean glue off. So I am protecting my surface. You've got a little bit of a dry time here to work with, which is good. It's part of the reason why I'm using Modge Podge, because it does not dry super quick. Okay. And then I can add my piece of paper. The nice thing about Modge Podge too is that it's a sealer, right? So this is going to be water resistant when I add my outer layer. So I'm just pressing that up together. Now I can throw my piece of paper away. So I don't want that to dry on my copy paper. Okay, so there's one side, nice and adhered and lined up perfectly. Now I'm going to go ahead and glue my opposite side. Notice that I picked a paper for the inside that is multi-directional. So I can go this way, I can go this way, and it won't matter. If I had picked something that had a directional image to it, I needed to be careful with that when I glue this down. That's also why I picked this one, because I can flip it back and forth. Okay, there's some glue. Now this is going to be thick. Got a snot there. Gross. And I want this to be thicker because I intend to use this in my purse and all that stuff. So when you create something like this, you just have to be cognizant of how you're going to use it. So there's that guy right there. Grab another piece of paper real quick because I stuck the back in here on accident. Now, another reason why I am going ahead and gluing this down first before scoring is because then I can trim any parts that are struggling. So, and I can see this part's struggling a little bit. You can see down here, I've got a little bit of a white border, and on this side I've got a little bit of a white border. And that's probably just what happened when I pressed down and didn't make sure that I had it all adhered right. Not a big deal. Actually, I'm going to trim this up now. See how I can just kind of trim it up? Not a big deal. And when it's a small mistake like that, in the long run, it's not going to really make a difference for your, like that little sliver is not going to make a difference when it comes to how the notebook will fit. Okay, so we can move this and this aside. I'm going to use the gloss sealer on the outside of this notebook. Oh my goodness. And then let it dry before I continue. Okay. Oh. That was intense. One thing to note, when you are using a brush like this, you will get those streaks. You can take it or leave it. In my case, I don't really care because I'm going the direction of the pattern. It's not going to make a difference. If I had something that it would really make a difference for, I would go ahead and use a sponge applicator instead of a brush. You're less likely to get streaks like I am here. As I continue to go back and forth on this glue, what I'm trying to do is thin it out. Yes, it's a sealer, but you don't want it to have that weird tacky feeling, which you'll get because it is a sealer and it's glue and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so now I'm going to lift this up. Try not to touch the outside of it, and I'm going to let this dry completely. And when it's dry completely, it'll be clear and it'll be clear. Definitely clean your brush in between uses because that glue will stay on there and just ruin your brush. And this is water soluble while it's wet, so you can just use soap and water to do that. Okay, so let this dry and I'll come back and we will finish up this project. So I've let this dry, so it's still movable, but it definitely has a thicker, kind of glossy tint to it. I don't know if you can tell, but there are brush strokes. That is fine. I've also gone ahead and done this side with the gloss. And then what I did try to do is use my corner rounder, but it wouldn't quite cut around that many layers. So I pressed it in as far as I could and then just used my scissors to follow along the edge. Next, we need to score. So I'm going to score on the inside. And I'm going to take my handy dandy scoring tool. We're going to start at 3 1/8 and go every 3/8. So here's 3 1/8. And then 1, 2, 3 marks. So then it's 3 1/2. 1, 2, 3 marks. 3 7/8. 1, 2, 3, 4 1/4. Yep, 4 1/4. That's a little bit there. 1, 2, 3, 4 5/8. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. One more. 1, 2, 3, and 5. Okay. So what I've created is 5 spaces for notebooks. So we're going to go ahead and bend at those spots. So I'm going to take my bone folder. Going to go ahead and bend. Not caring so much about the lines as making sure that everything is even. Okay. I'm only going to bend the one way, and that's in, because I don't want to be able to bend it the other way. Okay, let's see what we can do here. What I might end up doing is going ahead and bending the first and the last ones, kind of pushing down. Now this is 3, remember, 3 cardstock thick plus sealer on it. Go ahead and bend there. I don't really care about bending super tight on these ones here. This is more of a guide to make sure that my eyelets are spaced properly. Now, if you look at like the commercial style notebooks, they usually just go into one hole. What we're doing is taking it a little bit further so that each notebook will have a spot for itself. Now that's going to be kind of thick, but let's take a look at our notebooks. We're going to have 1, 2, 3, and then 4. That is a good height for those, I think. And what's going to happen is that this notebook is going to end up kind of bending like that, rounded instead of flat. So I'm okay with there not being so much give from these. So you have to remember that it's going to be here. Okay. So now we're going to take our eyelet setter. And we're going to go as close to the edge as possible. So right now, we're at 1/8. We're going to go smidge closer. Oh, that's as close as we can get. Okay, so we're going to go as close as we can get to the edge according to this. And we're just going to chomp it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5. Then we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, but what about that middle one? That is where an old school eyelet setter is going to come into play. That's what this is. So I've got a hole punch tool by making memories, so it's old school. And this will allow me to punch a hole, yep, that one, in the middle. Normally you would need a hammer. I go ahead and say that's about the middle. Doesn't have to be perfect. Excuse me for the loudness. And there is our hole punch. Pretty neat, huh? Make sure the gross side is on the inside, right? So facing up, and press and chomp. See how it looks nice on the outside but then looks crappy on the inside? That's because I'm setting it like that, where the outside, the good side, is on the outside. If you have one of these, you'll definitely know how to use it. I don't really know that there's a difference on this portion. I just picked the small one for the small brad kind of thing, or eyelet, excuse me, not brad. So I will go ahead and finish that up, and then we'll go through, let's first go through how to do this one. This one's gonna poke through the back. I'm sorry, yep, like this, okay? Notice how it's a lot bigger. This wouldn't have been my first choice, but that's the only option really that I had with this guy. So now I'm going to take my old school eyelet setter. We're going to go ahead and pick this guy to split the eyelet. Again, not actually on my glass mat. Okay, see how that splits it? So now that's the eyelet. I can choose to switch this up, try to round the edges a smidge. Let's see if that's gonna work. Okay, rounded it just a smidge more because there's the divots there. Okay, so what I'm doing to measure is I'm wrapping this around 5 times plus 1. So however many eyelets I have, I do plus 1. So this is wrapped around 6 times just to get the measure of it. Now this may be way too much string, and I think it probably is, but I'd rather have too much string than not enough, because the not enough would make you then add a knot, and I never want to add a knot. So I'm taking my threader and my needle. I never thread a needle without my threader because I clearly can't get it in there. And then making sure I'm taking the biggest eye piece that I can to fit through here, and I'm just gonna go like that. I'm gonna start in the upper right hand corner from the back and just work my way through. Okay, so I'm gonna have an extra long piece there. Extra long piece, okay? So then I'm just gonna go back and forth. So down, through the hole, and then from the outside I'm just gonna go to the next hole and go up. And follow that same process. So we're not actually going back and forth from the standpoint of the outside. What's happening, I lost my needle here, hang on. What's happening is I'm just showing on the outside going around that way. Okay, and then back through behind, in the middle, up top, to the next one, and then down here. Okay, so I have a lot of string left over. My goal is to make it back here. We're going to do that by just going to the next one here. And going through, hang on, I want to make sure I'm doing this right. Because I want to make sure that the back of here looks pretty. The only way it's going to look pretty is if I've got all of them covered. So I'm just going to go ahead and move all the way over. So now the back looks pretty, right? It's got all of that. I'm going to go from here to the middle hole and go through. Got a lot of string left over, like a lot of string left over. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and just try to feed myself more string here. So let's do that. Feed myself more string. Okay, much better. Now, I'm going to do the same thing with this one, but this time I'm going to make the top look pretty. Right, so I'm going to go back through this, and then through the middle hole on the inside. So, thread my needle. I always kind of wet this in between my lips. It's just something that my grandma taught me and I never can break the habit. It actually helps you get it through the threader. So, let's make this look pretty. Maybe by just doing a single stitch. Back. And forth. So now all the stitches are covered. I'm going to go ahead and go to the middle, kind of underneath any of the other ones. And at this point, I'm actually going to tie my two ends. From the outside. Uh-oh. Did something funky here. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and tie my two ends. They're about even. And I have so much string that I'm just going to cut it off anyway. So I guess 5 times plus 1 is too many. It worked out perfectly for the other one. Okay. So we're just going to tie a square knot. So going over one hand and then through the other. Just 2 knots. You can't even tell it's there. So now these are music tight, because I can kind of get some music out of them. And then I've got my handy dandy loopy loop to go ahead and go around this a bazillion times. So let's take a look at what this looks like with a notebook before we add our button. I'm going to go ahead and take my notebook in the middle and just slide it, making sure everything fits, because it can be kind of tight. 2. I'm going to skip this one. 3. This is why it's important to go all the way to the edge, because I didn't give us enough room. Or very much room, I'm sorry. I have enough room, but I'm not very much room to get these under here. And if these were any looser, what would happen is that they fall out, and we definitely don't want that to happen. See how this nicely sits? Okay. So when it's in my purse or wherever I'm keeping this, I'm probably going to end up smooshing it like that. But if I use this for memory keeping, it's probably going to go out to like here. So we need to combat that a little bit. The way we were doing this before is you would put your thumb down and then wrap this under. So it kind of looks like that. We're going to go ahead and thread our button with just one string. Lick it and then stick it through. What this allows us to do then is to tie a super simple knot in the end here. So if I go around the way that I want to, my button needs to land like right about there. I'm gonna go ahead and just loop it around my finger and knot it. And I do this instead of a square knot because as it tightens, it will, or as you pull on it, it will get tighter. So it looks like that wasn't tight enough. I'm gonna go ahead and try that again. There we go. So now I got a cute little daisy to hold my notebook together. How cute. I'm going to go ahead and just leave about that much room because as this gets bigger, I want to be able to lengthen this if I need to. I always add string back. I've got plenty of it. And that, my friends, is our traveler's notebook. That's waterproof and sealed with cute Paige Evans Bungalow Lane paper. If you like this tutorial, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. I will definitely list all the materials that I used and try to find you a daisy button too, so if you don't have that in your stash, you can use it. I hope you make your own traveler's notebooks out of 6x6 paper so that you can play along too. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.